The middle class is being annihilated. It's like 9/11 in slow motion here. And money is being looted from the middle class and transferred to the 0.01%, to the money masters.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. You're going to want to tune in for this one. It's important economic information about the very future of our country, and it's quantifiable information you should have and you should share with those you love. But before we begin this important interview with John Titus, just a quick word from this interview's sponsor. With practically everyone working from home now, VPN security is required. With more and more hackers and identity thieves on the prowl, if you don't have a VPN, now is the time to get one. Virtual Shield has the easiest and fastest VPN on the market and offers a free 30-day trial. Here, let me show you how easy it is to protect yourself. You just go to virtualshield.com or app or Google Play Store and download the Virtual Shield free 30-day trial, install it, and click connect. Take a look. Once I'm connected, my IP address says it's one coming out of Chicago, and I don't live anywhere near Chicago, Illinois. Due to economic hardship caused by the coronavirus lockdown, Virtual Shield wants to extend a Customer Appreciation Month to everyone and offer 50% off all VPN plans and all premium add-ons, including Protection Plus, Residential Access, and VIP Performance plans. So sign up to a free 30-day trial to Virtual Shield VPN to see what the hype's about. You have nothing to lose. I'll leave the link below this interview. And welcome back, friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's wonderful to have you guys back. Today we are going to talk about the very real consequences of monetary madness with my friend John Titus of the Best Evidence YouTube channel. So much to talk about. I have some sound bites to play for you guys. We have some screen shares to do. And we're going to start by asking John about the totalitarian tiptoe over there at YouTube. Now they're coming after John for being just a little too truthy, aren't they, John? Welcome.
Thank you, Sean. It's good to be here. Yes, YouTube has come after me for the first time. I have produced a grand total of 12 or 13 videos, something like that. And YouTube just took the first one down today. That video was called Presenting the Federal Reserve's Plan for Totalitarianism. That video got taken down. Fortunately, YouTube is a large, rather ham-fisted organization that telegraphs its moves. So I took the precaution of setting up a BitChute channel, hoping that I would not have to rely on it, but as a fallback position. But I have, so that video, if you want to see it, is over at BitChute.
And same channel name over there?
Same channel name.
Best Evidence. Okay.
Do
you want to just give us the liner notes? Give us the cliff notes. What was that video about that YouTube could have found so offensive?
That video was really, it focused on an interview that Neil Kashkari, the president of the Minneapolis Federal Reserve, gave to Face the Nation, which is a major television show. He's given plenty of interviews at CNBC, but that's an audience of 200,000 people. An interview on Face the Nation is the real deal. That's 5 million people. And in that interview, he talks about the progression of the pandemic in a way that sounded more like programming and a rollout and an announcement that it did information. I mean, the telltale signs of talking points were all there. And I went into that and I said, here's their plan. Here's what he's telling you. And I sort of deconstructed that interview that he gave and said, the plan is, he comes right out and says it, that the Fed or whoever, he doesn't ever say, he keeps saying us, we are going to find the healthy people who are ready to go back to work, the low risk people, and let them go back to work. And we are going to quarantine the high risk people, which basically means we're going to imprison them.
Your colleague, James Bullard of the St. Louis Fed, was with us last week, and he said that the answer lies fully in technology. It's testing and surveillance, getting people before they walk into their employer to have a test and wear a badge. I mean, is that your guidance here too?
Well, I would love it if that were possible. I've talked to some healthcare experts who say that it's a fantasy, that we're going to be able to test tens of millions of people every day, that there simply is not the equipment, there's not the supply chain. I hope they're wrong. That's a real concern.
So I went into that and I went blow by blow, and I explained how the interview was not really an interview. It's really a two-party talking point presentation. It was pre-scripted very obviously if you watch any number of interviews. And I point out that they have these lapel microphones and they are not wearing masks, and undoubtedly those microphones have not been washed or disinfected, and so the rules that apply to us in terms of wearing masks everywhere do not apply to the powers that be, and they want you to know that. So I don't think the video went over very well in the Federal Reserve or anywhere in the echelons of higher power, and that's too bad because I have BitChute.
YouTube doesn't want you using these people's own words to make your case, John. That's just a little too truthy, and you need to have your hand slapped. Now, that's interesting that he said, we're going to find the healthy people and allow them back to work, and we're going to presumably find the sick people then and quarantine them, which brings me to H.R. 6666, which everyone has been talking about, the TRACE Act, COVID-19 Testing, Reaching, and Contacting Everyone Act. Now get this, regardless of what that act can or can't do, John, the cost will be $100 billion by their estimates. $100 billion. Perhaps it's time to do a screen share. That's the U.S. national debt. Now, I know it's become a little passé to be a critic of anything the Fed or the Treasury is doing since the White Hats are in control, but I will continue to come back to this because I think it's very important that people understand that their purchasing power is being destroyed before their very eyes. Right next to me, on my desk, is 1 kilo of silver, 32 troy ounces, just a little over 32 troy ounces of silver. I keep this on my desk, John, as a reminder of what real money is, and as a reminder of what an absolute charade these numbers are going on before us, because that kilo bar of silver cost just over $600. 32 ounces of real money that took real time, real effort, and real energy by men and women to dig it out of the ground, refine it, and turn it into this bar. There is no reason on earth that this beautiful, precious metals bar should only be $600 in a world where you see this kind of monetary madness. I want to talk in this interview with you about the consequences of this horror show, John. Your thoughts on any of what I just said?
Quite a few thoughts, actually, and thanks for bringing it up. First, I might disagree with you slightly that silver is money. I think of silver and gold both as really more as stores of value. There's an old adage about silver, saying about silver that a silver quarter will always buy you a gallon of gasoline, and likewise, an ounce of gold will always buy you a very good men's suit. And that's a testament to the fact that those metals hold value.
That's also a testament to the gold to silver ratio. It's been inflated to something like over 100 ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold, when the historical norm is closer to 15 to 1.
Right. I think of the historical norm as 12 to 1, but you've got it. We're on the same order of magnitude. It's on the order of magnitude of 10 to 1, not 100 to 1. It's an order of magnitude off. So that's the second point about that. The other thought I have in looking at some of these numbers is that what is going on now by this lockdown, and I don't know whether you looked at the unemployment report from Friday, the one that was just released for the month of April. It comes out on the first Friday of the month. That report was a disaster. We are going to breach the all-time low for the labor force participation rate next month. And the reason is obvious. Everybody's staying at home, and businesses are going to go out of business because there's zero revenue. And as a result of that, in our debt-based monetary system in which all of our money, or 90% of our money, is created out of thin air by commercial banks when they make loans, as a consequence of that, when people stay home and when businesses fail, they're not going to make loan payments, and it is going to reduce the money supply. And you can see that in the Great Depression from 1929 to 1933, the money supply got reduced by 32% or so, 33%. And what happened, that is the Depression, when your money supply gets crushed like that. But what the powers that be are doing now is very interesting. To counter what they know they're doing in terms of the destruction of the money supply to people, when I say money supply, I'm talking about, checking money where I could get money out of my account and into your PayPal account, for example, with just a few taps on my computer keyboard, right? That's the money supply I'm talking about. With the destruction of that money supply, the powers that be know what they're doing, and they know it's going to cause a depression. But to mask the shrinkage in the destruction of the money supply, they are at the same time creating new money through all these bailout provisions and through the Federal Reserve's bailout positions in the expansion, in the particular way that they're expanding the balance sheet, that is masking the destruction and the reduction of the money supply. And at the same time, it is transferring newly created money to replace the money that's being destroyed on Main Street. There is newly created money that is being shunted over to Wall Street. And that is what is going on. And that's the thought that occurs to me when I see the debt clock on that screen share. It's criminal what's going on. The middle class is being annihilated. It's like 9/11 in slow motion here. And money is being looted from the middle class and transferred to the 0.01%, to the money masters. And that's what's going on. That's the reality on the ground. And that's what I'm trying to explain as clearly as I can on my channel.
And what I have been trying to scream from the rooftops about the blatant criminality of all of this is the fact that if you take a look at Walmart being open and the Forbes richest people list, many of the names on that list are Walmart family members, Walton family members, multi-billionaires. So Walmart gets to be open while your little privately run shop has to be closed. We've entered the twilight zone. So the reason I keep coming back to the national debt is because, well, in the words of Adam Baratta, the author of The Great Devaluation, he says, we overlook long-term trends and consequences as human beings. We don't recognize exponential growth because we can't see it. And then he makes a really important point about an asymptote. Do you know what that is, John?
Yes.
An asymptote, right? It's a line on an X or Y axis that eventually curves and goes infinite, exponential. So let me do another screen share here because I think this is really important for people who are listening to understand. This is Adam's presentation called The Next Black Swan Event.
What's coming next is the great devaluation. We are now 1 minute to midnight. A black swan event is imminent.
Let me jump forward in the presentation. He explains that an asymptote, exponential growth, is hard to see, and there's that old riddle. If you ask people on the street to imagine a lab where a vial had bacteria in it, and every 1 minute the bacteria doubled, at what point in the hour, between 11 and midnight, at what point would that doubling of the bacteria become uncontainable? Most people think it's 11:30. The answer is 11:59.
11:59 is half the value.
Yeah. Let me go to 1046 and demonstrate an asymptote.
Now I want to highlight an asymptote, a deadly virus that has now become uncontainable. This is the debt of the United States. Can you identify the asymptotes? Donald Trump is on pace to double the debt of Obama, who doubled the debt of Bush, who doubled the debt of Clinton. What's alarming is that this has happened in what is widely being called the greatest economy in history. Last year, the United States ran a budget deficit of $1.2 trillion, which begs a very important question. If this is how we run our budgets in the very best of times, how big will our budget deficits become when things become less great?
I'll pause it there and come back to you, John. I just think it is so important that people understand what's going on here is so far from normal and acceptable in a republic that's by and for the people that it cannot be overstated. We are seeing a looting right before our very eyes.
True.
So what are we going to do about it, and how do we take the system back, or does it just all end terribly badly?
We have passed the point of no return, I'm sorry to say, and that happened a number of years ago when the Justice Department refused to prosecute any of the banks that had openly admitted to criminality. The bankers would come out and say, yes, we committed these crimes, and the Justice Department would say, well, we can't prosecute you because you are too big to prosecute. If we prosecute you, there will be all these dire collateral consequences. And when that happened and the system openly acknowledged that there were people who were above the law, the rule of law died, meaning there was a coup d'etat, that the law was no longer the supreme in the land, that the people who had this criminal immunity, they are your supreme rulers. And it has been that way since 2012. Donald Trump did nothing to change that. That began on Obama's watch, and it has continued on Trump's watch. So the rule of law is gone, and what we are dealing with now is the tremors, the after effects. What we are watching now is the chicken run around with its head cut off. The only way to get back the rule of law is the way we got it instituted in the first place, which was in 1776, when we conducted a revolution against our criminal leaders. And that is the only way to get it back now, unfortunately. I mean, that's my view. I don't think we're going to vote. Or I think the notion that you're going to vote your way out of this mess or protest your way out of it, that's just laughable to me, because criminals are in charge and they're running the situation, and that's going to continue until there's an open revolt against this system. And that's just that. And that's a dire view. It's an unpopular view, but that is how I look at the situation now. My purpose on this earth at this point is to make life better for other people, number one. And number two, to make an attempt to lay a record so that people on the other side of the catastrophe that we are headed into can put back together the pieces and say, gosh, what happened to send things so very, very wrong back in the year 2020 or 2021, whatever the final date might be? Where did it all go wrong? And it all went wrong for exactly the reason you're talking about, which is our debt-based monetary system, in which exponential growth is a feature of the system. You can't get out from that exponential growth. And that is what is so destructive to society and to the middle class. It just keeps taking out more and more people. It took out farmers in the early 20s. It took out the industrialists in 1929. And it is now going to remove the middle class in the year 2020. That's just, I mean, that's a horribly dire point of view, but that is what I think is going on. Now, the upside of that view is that it gives me a degree of freedom, and I accept the fact that I'm not going to come out of this. It is wonderfully liberating freedom to pursue things that bring me happiness and peace spiritually, which is where that's really the only thing that matters in the end anyway. But I don't think we're going to come out of this, Sean.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. Before I forget, I want to ask you about life in your state. We see totalitarian governors around the country, not all of them being totalitarian, some of them being quite supportive of the Constitution. I think the one in, what is her name? Is it Kristi Noem in South Dakota? Very, very supportive of the Constitution, never closed down businesses, and people celebrate her. Meanwhile, in Michigan, we have that tyrant, Gretchen Whitmer, as probably the single best example outside of New York, perhaps. What is life like in your state? Do you have a tyrannical governor or no?
It's weird. I go out on my bicycle every day to get exercise. I go on my bike every day. It's not raining to get exercise. And so I see a lot of stuff on the ground. And what I have seen more and more, first of all, there's more and more foot traffic, and there's certainly more and more traffic, car traffic, vehicle traffic. That's increasing, I think, as people are starting to test the waters. But by and large, people are scared to death. Everybody's wearing a mask everywhere, except for me, and a few other people. I'm exaggerating. That's number one. Number two, the thing that bothers me, there's two things that I've noticed recently that have started to really, like, what is going on here? One is that the police barricades in Lincoln Park, if you don't know, excuse me, Lincoln Park, if you don't know Chicago geography, is the easternmost park in the city. So it fronts Lake Michigan. And so there's a long stretch of bike front path that you can ride and really look at the city and get some spectacular views of Chicago. But the police barricades, so they closed down the lakefront bike path and they closed down the beachfront. And slowly and steadily, the police barricades are moving, creeping in westward. So they're closing off more and more parts of Lincoln Park. There are more and more sections of Lincoln Park that are inaccessible to me by bicycle. I find that disturbing. The other thing that I find really, it unnerves me in some way, is a sign I see everywhere. It's a white sign. It looks like it was organically created maybe by, I don't know, some people who got together and said, hey, let's go to Kinko's and make this big sign. It says, it's about a 2.5, maybe a 3 foot by 3 foot sign that says everything is going to be okay. And they spell okay with just the letters okay. Okay is actually spelled O-K-A-Y. So when you see a mistake repeated and you see it in the same color and in the same font, one can be pretty assured that that sign and that mistake there is coming from the same source.
Right.
Follow me?
Yeah, I do. Let me ask you something. So you're in Illinois. I, for some reason, was thinking you were in Ohio. So your governor's Pritzker. Isn't that his name?
Correct.
That guy's a tyrant. I think we're hearing out of his office that he doesn't necessarily think things should open back up until a Gates vaccine is discovered. Is that accurate?
Yeah, he toes 100% the party line. You can measure governors, in my view, by the degree to which they toe the party line. The party line is we need to be shut down for 18 months until the wonderful Bill Gates comes up with a great vaccine to save us all from this dreadfully fatal virus. That's the 100% party line. Pritzker buys into that all the way. So does the mayor, Lori Lightfoot. They're all party line towers. They buy the corporate line, hook, line, and sinker. They enforce it without questioning. You know, they don't question a thing they're told to do. They just do it, and they expect you to do it too. So you're totally right about him being a petty tyrant. That is exactly what he's a brain dead, overweight tyrant. That is what he is.
So in Chicago, are all of the small businesses, restaurants, bars, everything's shut down except for some of those big box stores?
Yes, it is amazing to me to ride my bike down Clark Street by Wrigley Field. Wrigley Field at this time of the year, even when the Cubs are out of town for baseball games, Wrigley Field and the bars around Wrigley Field are packed at this time of the year because people are so happy. Spring is here, the sun shines out, we have baseball again. Even when the Cubs are away and there's not a game at Wrigley Field, the area around Clark and Addison and Sheffield and Halstead, those streets are packed with people, and they are empty now. I feel like Will Smith at the very beginning of I Am Legend, driving around in a muscle car through the empty streets of Manhattan with the only life are deer running around amok.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's really bizarre.
It's very dystopian, and I think, let me just share a couple of thoughts here. This is how we know this is part of a far larger, I think, very evil plan. I want to share something with you here in a second, but just a thought. In the state in which I'm in, we had a budget surplus, and now the governor, who's locked down all the small businesses, just like your governor did, now he's coming out and saying, darn it, now we've got a $2.3 billion deficit. To which I respond, yeah, you moron, because you shut everything down. So there's no sales tax collections. There's no anything coming into the state treasury. So the same guy that shut everything down now and said, y'all are doing a great job sheltering in place. Thanks. We'll all get through this mess together. Now you're coming out and saying $2.3 billion deficit. Couldn't have seen that coming. All right. So these people are operationally either completely idiots, John, or this is being done by design. Let me show you this. You talk about the shutdown there in Lincoln Park. Let's take a look and talk about the bigger plan. Seattle will permanently close 20 miles of residential streets to most vehicle traffic.
Wow.
Now, I want people to understand, if you don't know what United Nations Agenda 21 is, you better start looking into it. You better start trying to find the information on YouTube while it's still there and learn about the fact that, to me, John, this is UN Agenda 21. And I could never figure out how they were going to get us there. But I'm telling you, between news items like this and HR 6666, the Trace Act, Testing, Reaching, Contacting Everyone Act, that'll cost another $100 billion, it just seems like they're burning the house down. And this is the new normal they want us to believe. We better just get used to it.
You're totally right about being a plan, because at the beginning of this, it was like, well, we just don't know the path of the virus. It all depends on the virus, and what the virus decides to do. What you just showed me is a plan, because they're permanently closing streets. Why would you permanently close the streets if no one really knew what the outcome of the virus was? Answer, they wouldn't. The outcome of the virus has nothing to do with anything. It's just a pretext for people to go ahead with whatever plan it is that they have in their back pocket. I'll tell you something else. I saw a video the other day from 2014 by a guy I'd never heard of named Harry Vox, where he presents a document from the Rockefeller Foundation.
Yep.
Reads from it about a pandemic. It sounds like he's describing something. Sounds like he's describing the pandemic from last week.
That's right.
2014.
John, that document is titled Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development. It's from May 2010. It's a Rockefeller Foundation document, and on page 18 is Lockstep, Blueprint for a Rockefeller World, a world of tighter, top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation. That's what Agenda 21 brings us, limited innovation, and growing citizen pushback. So they war-gamed all of this stuff in 2010, if not before that.
I will tell you, Sean, I am not much of one for conspiracy type stuff, but I happened across that video. I almost fell out of my chair when he read from that document. It is stunning to hear him read from that document.
Yeah, and that video you're referring to with Harry Vox, I think that's from 2016 or 14. I mean, that's 14. Not a new video, right?
No,
right.
But it wasn't a very well trafficked video either, though, Sean. It had maybe 30,000 views. Who knows? It may be in a copy, but whatever. I was stunned. So then when I see headlines like that Seattle one you showed about closing roads for 20 years, I mean, how do you look at that and not cope with the reality that this is a plan?
It's a plan, and it's rolling out before our very eyes, and the only thing that can stop it is we the people standing up against it with our police officers and sheriffs on our side, because if they're going,
sheriffs, yes,
because look, that's the only way this works for these globalists. The only way this plan works is if we are our own prison guards.
Right. That is correct. You're on your own now. That's what that means.
Let me ask you a couple more questions before we part ways. It's pretty good for the news to be spreading that the Obama people got caught, and it looks like it goes straight to the top regarding the entrapment of President Donald Trump and the whole Russian collusion and all that. As you know, and our listeners know, John, it does go all the way to the top. It goes to Barack Obama. So very satirical. So the question is, are you holding out hope that we're going to see some indictments of these high-level criminals? I am. I mean, I do believe that Barr is working intensely on potentially on indictments of people like, James Comey appears to be running scared. Adam Schiff, I think, is in a panic. I wonder about John Brennan. He should be lawyering up. How do you think this all plays out for the deep state?
0 indictments, 0 prosecutions. And the reason for that, Sean, is that when you have a genuine trial, you have something called discovery. And that is where the defendants get into the information of the prosecutors, and they can say, what is your evidence? All this evidence of what's going on behind the scenes would come out in a genuine litigation and genuine prosecution. The powers that be can't afford that, because the secret spilling out would spell the end. People would wake up and go, what in the Sam Hill is going on here? And then they might really take up arms, and they don't want that. This is all street theater. I don't think you'll see a single person indicted. I mean, if you look at Barr's history, his history, though, even though his reputation as this strict law enforcer, if you actually look at his history, it's one of not enforcing the law. He's not going to prosecute anybody.
As you know, John, I bring on all sorts of different guests, and I let everybody view their own opinion. I know that opinion won't be a popular one, because we're all holding out hope that something good happens here. But I continue to share the quantifiables as we have in this interview, and there's a lot of bad stuff going on. So
let me just say something briefly about holding out hope. Holding out hope serves the interests of the criminals in charge, because it encourages you to sit down on your couch and watch television and keep crossing your fingers and not to do anything about it. So the carrot is always dangled in terms of the hope. And that would be my best advice. Keep that in mind.
I know that you're going to be on with Catherine Austin Fitz here in the next day or two, and I've had Catherine on. She's great. The reason I called up the U.S. National Debt Clock again here is that it just reminds me of what she's said over the years, which is this is just the tip of the iceberg. there's 28 trillion or something missing that's never been accounted for, and she should know because I think she used to be one of these accounting people in the government.
Catherine Austin Fitts was the managing director of a boutique investment bank on Wall Street called Dillon Reed. Do you know who else worked at Dillon Reed while she was there? Probably under her? Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve chief. Catherine Austin Fitts is the real deal. She has the goods. So when she says 29 trillion is missing, 29 trillion is missing.
But she used to work in the government too.
Yes, she was the Assistant Secretary of Housing under Bush 1.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So she was a notch below a cabinet official. Like I say, she's the real deal. She got her MBA from Wharton. She's super smart woman.
Yeah, and I know they came after her hard and tried to ruin her when she got a little too truthy as well.
Yeah.
Well, these are strange days, aren't they, my friend? I mean, because look, as you know, I just did an interview with a gal who lost her boyfriend of 9 years, and there are consequences to what we're seeing. There are real-world consequences to real people, real consequences for this economic shutdown. And there are going to be real consequences for this kind of monetary policy, which is gutting our economy and giving what's left of it basically a reverse Robin Hood, stealing from the poor and giving to the rich.
That's exactly right. And one of the things that's not so well known about the Great Depression back in the 20s and early 30s is that the suicide rate went way, way up. It went massively up. And part of the reason that people don't know about that is that at the same time the suicide rate is going through the roof, the rate of tuberculosis is climbing down. And so the mortality rates and the longevity rates, they sort of evened out, they balanced out those two competing things. And so you don't really notice it. But that's a very real effect of a depression. And we are in a depression right now. And in a depression, people are depressed. They kill themselves. That's just a consequence of it. In fact, there are people who've done calculations on for X percent of loss of an unemployment rate, you are going to get Y number of suicides. So the powers that be know what they're doing. I go back to an Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. quote, Holmes being the great American jurist in the early 20th century, where he said, even a dog knows the difference between being tripped over and being kicked. Of course, when he said that, it was before the advent of television. So while the dog still knows that he's being kicked, a lot of people who watch TV are convinced again and again and again that they're not being kicked, that it was all some big accident. This is no accident.
John, I really do thank you for your time and your candor. I know you're a red-blooded American. You love to get out there and tell the truth. I would advise everybody to go and subscribe to your YouTube channel. It's called Best Evidence on YouTube. It's John Titus. If you guys want to watch his recently removed by YouTube video, it's titled Presenting the Federal Reserve Script for Totalitarianism, and you can find that over on his BitChute channel of the same name, Best Evidence. John, thanks so much.
Thank you, Sean.
And good luck. Say hi to Catherine Austin Fitts for me. I've had her on before. She's great.
Do that.
All right, brother. Thank you. And friends, thank you so much for tuning in. We very much appreciate each and every one of you. And look, if you find yourself at the end of your rope, please reach out. Reach out to those close to you. You are not alone. We are all under attack. We're all feeling the heat. And what John and I are trying to do is just point our fingers at the true enemy. The enemy is not your neighbor. The enemy is the bankers and the politicians they control. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. And for real news 24/7, you can visit us directly at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda. God bless. Bye-bye.
So they'd been struggling with a difficult market, but then when all tourism was shut down, the whole economy shut down, and they weren't really able to do their business. Since it started 6 weeks ago, 3 agents, 3 realtors in their office have committed suicide.
Oh my God.